It's late afternoon or early evening, depending on your perspective, on the 24th day of August 2004, the former Plattsburgh Air Force Base, area we affectionately know and knew as the old base.
Mm-hmm.
And some time ago we stood on the steps of the stone barracks not too far from where we are now, a few hundred feet, and talked about a grandiose scheme for opening a transportation and military museum complex on the former base. A long time ago, Assemblyman Chris Orloff mentioned it. We talked about it. We promoted it. We thought maybe there would be a full-size replica of the Saratoga launched off the, anchored right off the beach here, and a lot of things. Well, here we are in 2004. And at least we have a transportation museum, right?
Indeed we do.
Captain Frank here, my dear friend for 100 million years, he walked in here and he was sitting here, and he's got the weather wax going this year. At least you got something happening.
Well, it's not the Saratoga, but it does have a sail, and it is wooden, and we do take people out to the island and share the military history and share the island experiences with them.
You know, it's possible that people are watching this show who haven't been in Plattsburgh very long, who are visiting here on vacation, and it's also very likely that many of our viewers have watched this program on a regular basis and care about the history we have here. Before we started the program, we mentioned the fact that this has about as much or more continuous military history as any place in the United States.
Not only that, the fact that that anchor that was recovered a few years back, that's in City Hall, is the key. It's the horseshoe nail of the Battle of 1814. It's the reason why we remained a country. That battle, had it been decided any other way, and certainly with 5-to-1 odds, it should have gone the other way. Had that battle gone the other way, there might be a different situation in this country.
Must we never forget that weekend that we spent trying to recreate the battle on the gym floor on Plattsburgh Air Force Base, and
Yeah.
Calvin and I and everybody else there got some version of the Texas flu and almost died. But we had some real experts in town that day, and that anchor is the one that was the focal point of all of it. I'll never forget when you first brought it up. I was on the radio. What year was that? 96?
96, I believe, Gordy.
I was still on the radio until 97. I called Kay up. We went flying down, and you had it wrapped in burlap sacks, and I don't know what all.
Had a hose spraying on it, keeping it wet. But, we were kind of like a dog chasing a car. We got it. What are we going to do with it? And I guess the state's decision to put it back where it had been safe for the past 200 years wasn't exactly an unwise decision. The only thing that ever rubbed my fur the wrong way is that I got about $7,000 out of my pocket wrapped up in that anchor, and I wasn't invited to the ceremony when they put it in City Hall. But my name gets spelled funny sometimes.
And that isn't the first time that you've been left holding the bag in various ventures on and off Lake Champlain since you came here back in the 1950s. I'll tell you that. We were just mentioning a few moments ago a piece of history that Frank and I were kind of personally connected with, and that is finding those cannon off of what is now called Cliff Haven by the two boys, whatever year that was.
63.
Wow. I'd only been here on the radio for a couple of years, and we went out there and recorded the whole thing as you brought those cannon up, and little did you know that was going to create about as big a stir as anything in this state in many years.
Well, we were doing fine with them. The young lads had agreed to put them in a museum, and if you recall, my scuba club that I was affiliated with had a little museum on Miller Street.
Infamous Wreck Raiders.
The Wreck Raiders, indeed. It was the Lake Champlain Underwater Historical Research Club, but the Wreck Raiders was the abbreviated version. Nonetheless, we had agreements that those cannons were going to be on display there. Well, after they come up, there was the Witherell Hotel was being auctioned that weekend, and the auctioneer commented that those cannons are worth a lot of money. And all of a sudden, the eyes looked like the old-fashioned cash registers with the dollar signs rolling around, and the cannons were hidden for 18 years. For 18 years, these pieces of history were in a garage where nobody but the person who owned the garage could appreciate them. And when they showed up in Sotheby's and commanded $76,000 finally, New York State did the right thing. But prior to that, we had contacted Dr. Everest, who was the professor of history up at the college, and he had agreed to act as a recipient, an agent of New York State, to receive the cannons until a decision could be made. But before we could move them, the cannons were stolen off my property by the parents of the kids who found them. And that was the controversy. Finally, I'm glad it resolved. It took 18 years to do it, and I think of the number of school groups in that 18-year period that could have seen those cannons and appreciated just what it was like to be alive at that day and age when you had something so massive for a weapon.
Isn't it amazing? They were absolutely beautiful cannon. And I don't know if you were more excited when you brought those cannon up or when you brought that anchor up for the first time.
I still get a rush. I still get excited.
I get excited thinking about it because if our viewers don't know it, we're going to tell you anyway. This is the anchor of the flagship of the Confiance or the Confiance, the British flagship involved in the Battle of Plattsburgh or the Battle of Lake Champlain on September 11th. Is that a date that rings a bell with you? 1814, not far from here. And you've sailed over that site at least 4 million times over the years.
But the lucky thing was when we sailed over it with our sonar on and we saw the anomaly on the bottom and got the GPS reading of it, we went back to Ken and Bill and said, hey, take a look at this location and see what's out there. And they came back with this big iron thing stuck in the bottom of the lake with a wooden thing across it. And I said, yep, that's it. And of course, once we saw the shot marks in it, we knew what we had. But talking about things from the bottom, I show this to you and I'll present it to the camera here forthwithly.
Ooh.
That came from the 1814 battle period. And,
did it really? Where'd it come from?
From the 1814 battle area.
I love it.
It was recovered by one of the fellows who I taught diving to back in the early 70s.
Wow.
Late 60s, as a matter of fact.
It's from a uniform?
Yeah, it's a uniform button, a sailor's uniform button.
Okay, yeah.
And I was lamenting the fact that all of the things that I had found I had put into museums, and I have nothing personal. And he said, well, here, he says, this is something for you, Skipper. And I was so pleased with that. And he had a whole handful of them. Of course, nowadays, they've got metal detectors, underwater metal detectors, that we didn't have. We would stumble across something. Now everything is much more scientific, and the work is more accurate. What they did down at Valcour has been incredible.
Oh,
the
gosh, and
Valcour
we've
Research
so much
Project.
on this program with these divers systematically and scientifically scouring the bottom, and those discoveries alone talk about getting the blood boiling. Isn't that interesting? The artifacts that were brought up and put on this, many put on display, and some are left there for a good reason.
Yeah. When we get down to the lakefront, there was two divers that were involved in the historical aspect of the Valcour Bay Research Project, cleaning up tires. So there's two sides. You're diving for history, and you're also helping the environment. There was about 10 divers down here a week or so ago,
yes,
and they did a big cleanup. There was tires that we used as breakwaters, and these tires broke up, drifted, and they're just removing them and getting them out of the way.
And we're here in front of what is now called the Champlain Valley Transportation Museum, which actually has been officially open for a little while now.
Yeah, the museum's been open for probably a year plus. Brian Hammond is the executive director. Dr. Anthony Vaccaro is the man behind it. It's his dream, and he had a passion for Lozier cars that were built here in Plattsburgh. And once we get into the museum and you see them, you'll be overwhelmed by the beauty of this Lozier vehicle that in 1915 sold for $5,000. Now, you were buying a Model T Ford for $500.
Sure.
And here's a car that sold for $5,000. And as I understand it, the test of the Lozier was to drive it from Plattsburgh to Rouse's Point at full throttle and back, and if it made it, then they sold the car.
And most of the time when they tested them, they didn't even have the body on it.
No?
We talked to somebody whose relative was one of the test drivers, and he looked like Barney Oldfield going down going down Margaret Street at 60, 70 miles an hour, and that's pretty good for the very early part of the 20th century.
Yeah, they were an amazing vehicle, very well engineered. They not only built vehicles, but they built boats also. The Lozier Boat Works is right where the big building is that Georgia Pacific has got.
Well, we have lamented the fact that our dear late friend Ron Venn died fairly recently.
He was on the board here at the museum.
He was.
And he was a very close friend of Dr. Vaccaro's.
And we'll talk about him more today. And he built a stunning diorama replica of the entire Lozier complex. And I'm not sure if that's on display here or somewhere. And if it's not, it should be.
I agree with you. I don't believe it is on display unless it's in one of the back rooms in storage, but I don't believe it's on display.
Well, that gives somebody a three-dimensional view of what the actual complex looked like, because Ron Venn was meticulous in his workmanship, and he would take many different photographs, check it out, and then build it to scale. We have so much to talk about today. With any luck at all, Tony Vaccaro will be here
shortly
to lead the parade, and we'll get a look at the weather wax, and we'll have so much to talk about on this beautiful sunshiny day in August from the former Plattsburgh Air Force Base. Well, we moved a little bit.
Gordy, welcome to the Weather Wax home port, the old Plattsburgh Air Base Marina, but we are doing a lot of things to clean it up, fix it up.
I heard you are.
And it makes a great jumping off place for Crab Island for the Weather Wax. And we've been taking people out to Crab Island where they enjoy the island experience. We tell them about 1759 and 1776 battles on the way out. And when we come back, we tell them about 1814. And it just works out so good. It's a perfect spot for us to be.
Talk about the Weather Wax a little bit. I don't think people have any clue as to what this might be.
The Weather Wax was named after a Captain Weather Wax, who was the skipper of the O.J. Sherman and a skipper of canal boats and ferries on the lake. He was a famous skipper on the lake back in his time. And as a matter of fact, his granddaughter lives right in Plattsburgh. She lives on Cumberland Head.
Oh.
And I had the pleasure of having her sail with us one day. It was really delightful. The boat was named after him, and it was designed from a photograph of an 1820 sailing ferry. Now, there were about 12 of these operating in the narrow crossings on Lake Champlain, like Alburgh, down at Chipman's Point, Crown Point, and the boats, you'd drop the ramp down, and you'd load a horse and carriage up on it, or cows or sheep or pigs, anything you wanted to put on. And the mast is stepped over to the side to allow passage of ducks flying by.
Yeah.
to allow passage of anything high to go through the the main deck.
Yeah.
Now there's a hatch in the back. We've got a motor hidden there, but back in the days of the sailing ferries, and there were 12 of them operating on a lake. Back in those days, the sailing ferries would sail to the other side, and they dropped the ramp down on the other side, and they could offload. You picked up the steering oar, you put it on the other side, you swung your boom tackle around, and you sailed the boat back in the other direction. And it was a fabulous idea. The boat was made for narrow crossings. It sails good with the prevailing south and north winds. It does a real good job, and we've put it into an interesting application we take people out to the Valcour Island Lighthouse. They can, we pick them up at Peru Dock, take them over to the lighthouse. They can enjoy the view from the lighthouse, see what the lighthouse keeper's life was like. Roger and Linda Harwood have put a historical display in the lighthouse. On Crab Island, we take them out and we provide them with a map. They can see the flagpole that John Rock put up, and then they can walk down to the monument. And this week we're going to be putting plaques and monuments out on Crab Island. And the Weather Wax is going to take equipment over. So it's a versatile unit.
When I said history, I wasn't kidding. It's everywhere. Everywhere you step, there's history. History was made here.
Right there.
And this is the panorama.
That's it.
You know,
down there is 1776. Out here is 1814. And down here is 1759. And it all happened here.
And who knows how many battles might be fought in the future among the people who are trying to get things done around here. Look who just showed up.
Hi.
How are you, Tony?
Good. I haven't seen you for a while.
I haven't seen you for a while.
You've lost some weight since I last saw you.
He's a good guy. I knew I liked these guys. I was just comparing Frank and I used to have some pretty good, we could have played some games of chicken. I'm not sure that we didn't way back when.
Frank Kennedy and I used to get at it with when he was my engineer at Channel 5.
Oh, goodness. We have had our good times. Well, we're glad you made it. We came down here to talk about the weather wax, and then we're going to go back up and look at the museum.
Okay.
And we're trying to give people a little bird's eye view of a dream that's coming true.
Well, it is coming true because Frank's made it happen. We've had people out on the lake, and they've had wonderful experiences. We've gotten very good feedback. We've gotten some nice letters, some nice phone calls. It's an opportunity for people to get out on the lake, especially those that don't live on the lake or have a boat.
It's great. Well, Frank would... He'd be like walking around with one leg if he couldn't be on a boat some kind.
You've got it, Gordy. That's the problem.
He introduced me to this lake in ways that I can't even tell you about on camera. 100 million years ago, but we've been friends for a long, long time. And when I was on the radio, Frank used to call occasionally, and we'd turn a 1-minute commercial into a 20-minute
got my money's worth, Gordy.
expose. And we just have had some great times.
Everybody that heard them enjoyed them too, because we talked about a lot of things that were happening on the lake.
Well, for those people, again, who might be visiting and looking at Channel 15 in their hotel room, and people do that occasionally.
Indeed.
Channel 24 and 32.
Watch Channel 24 and 32 and the various other channels that we're on across northern New York. Frank has been here for a long time, and for how many years you ran the Juniper?
25.
25, quarter of a century, taking people out on dinner cruises and booze cruises and weekend cruises and talking a lot about the history of Lake Champlain with the same kind of passion that you've heard today. And Dr. Tony Vaccaro is a relative newcomer.
14 years been here.
It's hard to believe.
I know,
14
really,
years. A mere baby
I know.
in terms of the eons like Methuselah that we've been around here, but it didn't take him long to get a passion for the kind of history that we have here.
Oh, it's great. It's the history is wonderful. There's a lot of history we've been able to bring forth and share with the community. I mean, as most people know, my enthusiasm is a little bit more up at the museum with the cars, but we decided to take on this project this year, and it was a challenge. It was a big challenge, but it's Frank's made it work. And you know, you're looking at something that's a replica of that sailed these waters in 1820.
Who built this boat? Yeah.
It was built, contracted out to Tri-Coastal Marine from California, who did the design, and then Douglas Brooks, a boat builder, lives in Virgins, Vermont, who has built replica wooden boats all over the world, built the Weather Wax. And he's an outstanding boat builder and a gentleman.
Before this, had you ever sailed anything quite like this before?
I've sailed a lot of boats. I've had sailboats, but I've never sailed anything that quite had the characteristics of this one.
Very interesting. It's you got to turn back the pages of time a little bit, huh?
Well,
And the boom never knocked you down?
No, not on this boat. The first boat I ever sailed on when I was 11 years old was a Nova Scotian gaff-rigged schooner. So I had a lot of remembering to do, and thankfully John Weeks came down and lent me some of his expertise on the rigging of the boat. Because once we got the mast up, it was, okay, where do we go from here? And John was a big help with it.
You know, people probably won't be seeing that. We're recording this in August. People won't see it sometime probably in late September. But what kind of, how many trips do you make and how often and how does that work?
We go mostly by reservations. We scheduled a 2 o'clock trip, but we didn't have that many people attending, I think because we couldn't get the word out quite well. And everything is in its embryonic stages. We're experimenting with different things. We want to do a fishing trip on Saturday mornings. We make the boat available for parties. We had a group of people charter the boat and bring their beverages on board, and we took them for a cruise. We go to the Valcour Island Lighthouse. We're talking about doing a camping trip next year. Take them out on Friday, pick them up on Sunday.
Great idea.
And we've got a lot of good ideas, and it's just a matter of seeing which ones are going to click the best.
So this boat came to you self-contained?
Well, no, there was a lot of work there involved. The boat came from the people down at Essex County through the Tourist Bureau, Jim McKenna.
Right.
And they had the boat, and they tried to make it work, but they found some difficulties, including trying to find somebody with Frank's abilities. I mean, we had to have an actual sailing captain that knew what he was doing and had the experience to handle something like this. So the boat ended up sitting, and unfortunately last fall it sat through a storm, one of the tropical storms that came through, and rubbing up against the wall down there put a rather large hole in the side of the boat.
Oh, lovely.
And Frank and Bruce Carlin and John Rock and a few other people got together to salvage this boat, and along the way it got moved out of there into another marina with plans to bring up here, but if you remember, we had an early very severe cold front came through, and unfortunately the boat ended up being frozen into the ice. So from that point, Frank and his fearless crew, one of which fell through the lake, fortunately it was shallow water,
Oh my.
dug it out of the ice, got it onto a trailer and brought it up here in between the snowflakes.
15th of December.
Come
we
on.
hoisted the sail. I hadn't sailed in December. I run my boats in December. Hoisted the sail, let the tow line slip, and we sailed the boat for about a mile. So just to say that we did it, it was fun.
Life has not been necessarily an easy time for Frank. Unfortunately, some of those rough seas I've been with him at, so we do have stories to tell. It's a great idea.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful concept. It lets young people and people who've never had any connection with a boat like this see what it's like and to experience what it's like.
Well, as we go along and as we learn, as I said, we're in our embryonic stages, and as the captain of the Titanic said, it's just the tip of the iceberg. It can't do nothing but get better.
It's going to get better, and I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to get in the car. It's a little chilly on this August afternoon, with the promise of very beautiful temperatures by the end of this week, as we're recording this on the 24th day of August with Frank Pabst and Dr. Tony Vaccaro. We're going to go back and take a look at this great new museum
You'll love it.
and see what the dream is for the future. Okay?
Sounds like a plan.
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
And through the magic of modern electronics, we've changed positions again, and we're away from the lake and inside this wonderful transportation museum. Doesn't
I'm
it?
surprised you've never been here before.
I wanted to save it. I wanted to save it for today. I didn't want to have to beat off the crowds, Tony. When you and I first talked a long, long time ago, Lozier was a kind of a nebulous thing with you. And over the last few years, it's become very much a reality.
Oh, it has. It has. And I can't say enough to the city itself and Dan Stewart and Dan Winnicky, who've been supporting the project 110%. And we've had some volunteers, and we have people like Frank who've really put their heart and soul into this project, and it's coming along. It's these type of grassroots efforts in the world of museums and the arts are hard to develop. We've learned this past year has been a year of just learning what the pitfalls are and the walls we have to climb over.
Lots of pitfalls and lots of walls.
You know, and financially, you know, with in part what happened in 9/11 has made it hard for all museums and cultural projects in the state of New York to be funded and supported, and takes money to make these projects go. But we've had limited funds, and as you're going to see, we've accomplished a tremendous amount, and a lot of that is just manpower from some good volunteers.
And that's one thing, we have a lot of good volunteer spirit here in the North Country.
There is, and some people have come forth. We've even in the last week or two, we've picked up 2 new people. One is going to be doing our grant writing, and another one has joined the board of directors, and he's actually going to be putting on an event in October in this room that we're standing in. You may know Stan Ransom.
The Connecticut peddler.
Well, he's going to
My
be
dear friend.
He's going to be doing a performance in here for the museum to support the museum, and we'll be announcing that soon.
What you see is not always what you get, and I've known Stan Ransom for a long time, and so has Calvin. He's just a delightful person. He loves various instruments. He loves storytelling, and he loves old songs. He was on Long Island, did a lot of research on ancient music connected with our country down there, and he has a collection of wonderful instruments. We had the pleasure of having Stan inviting us into that beautiful home of his and do a tour. And, you know, I hate to look into the camera with my mouth wide open, but that's the way it was. And he performed a lot of music for us. And, yeah, he's got several great CDs out, and just a good person. What is this here that we're looking at?
Well, this is a real live 1903 Lozier marine engine. You can see the size of it, and I can tell you it weighs a ton at least. I mean, it's extremely heavy because we had to move it, and it took block and tackle and all kinds of other devices to get it from one point to another.
You're telling me you didn't pull it in here on a bicycle?
No. This motor came out of a museum in Ohio that was closing down in the last few years, and it became available for us for here at the museum. It was produced here in Plattsburgh, and in fact, if you look at the front of it, to the right of you, you'll actually see that it says Lozier, and you can read off what it tells you.
Oh, yes, get over here with the camera. It says the Lozier Motor Company, Plattsburgh, New York, USA, speed 400.
RPMs.
And
The
HP,
horsepower,
30 horsepower.
30 horsepower on something that weighs probably 3,000 pounds. It's
Is
a little
it-
bit of a monster. But we need a ignition system on it, and we need a water pump for it, which we feel that we can get. Maybe not even if it's exactly Lozier, but we can get those parts that from that era. And this motor is runnable, and it's a neat piece of equipment. It's 4 cylinders. I took the spark plug out one day and stuck a wire down in it just out of curiosity, and what we call the stroke, how much the piston moves up and down, was about 8 inches, which in the world of automobiles is bigger than you can imagine. And the piston size are literally the size of coffee cans. So it's a slow running motor. The flywheel here, many hundreds of pounds. Sure. And on the front, if you bring the camera over, the interesting part is there's a cog up here, a gear. You can see that the gear has a slant to it. So in other words, what you do, because there was no electric starter, is you take a big stick and you put it on here, and you put it on here and you turn it to fire this motor up, and then you can see, because of the slants, what happens is once it starts spinning, it throws the wrench off of it. That's how
I
you
would
start
say it
this
probably
motor.
breaks both your arms and maybe a leg or two.
Yes, that's a good possibility.
Listen, I've turned the crank on enough old automobiles in my lifetime to know what can happen when it kicks back on you. Isn't that and that's how they had to start this
That's
thing.
how they started this motor.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Well, this is quite a coup here to pick the...
Well, yeah, you just don't find these every day, and our plan is to, we've written a grant, and we're working on trying to obtain money initially to do a feasibility study. We have a design engineer out of Connecticut who has experience in building antique boats, and when we told him about the project, he said, I want to get involved. He's a naval engineer who claims that he's done work on the Polaris submarines and everything down to a old replica sailing boat, his firm. And the plan would be is to design a 35-foot boat that would hold about 12, 15 passengers and put this motor in it and make it as close as we can as a replica of one of the Lozier boats that they built here in Plattsburgh.
Wouldn't that be fantastic?
Well, we think it'd be a great project to do.
My goodness.
And we have no doubts that we can get this motor running. It spins over. You can actually turn that flywheel with a lot of effort, but the motor spins freely. This motor will run. So that's what we're working on.
I love
in
it.
this corner.
I love it, and I'll bet you the volunteers are going to be coming at you with both hands in the air when we air this segment on Hometown Cable and the various cable systems in the North Country, because we've learned that there are a lot of old-time antique gas engine enthusiasts here. As a matter of fact, there is a club, and these guys just love to get involved in projects.
Yeah.
All right, let's move around here. What have we got here?
Well, here, these pictures were passed on to me from the church family, Wall Church. And these are pictures in the middle. Actually, he gave us the automotive pictures, but in the middle here, we have pictures of the Lozier boats. And this is the type of boat we're talking about building.
Oh, isn't that great?
Oh, it'd be a lovely boat to have. But over on the sides, these are pictures that were collected by the church family, and some of these are from within the Lozier factory. Here are some of the engineers testing the motor. Here's a picture of one of the cars under construction, a picture of one of the motors on the test stand, some more pictures of the vehicles on the test stand. But here's the assembly line, where the frames are laid out and the motors are being installed in the vehicles. You can see the engine, the front here with the fan, and the firewall between the engine and the cockpit where the passengers would sit. And a picture of the design team here in Plattsburgh.
And I bet you found out the name of every one of those.
Well, not quite yet.
Not everyone, right?
Here's some other pictures. This is one that was actually from inside the factory here in Plattsburgh. I've seen and been in buildings like this. I find it's very interesting. All the assembly work and, well, the milling work, the building work of the parts, the manufacturing of the parts are being made down here. And you see how they get their power. They have one big long shaft that runs through the factory, and that they have a large motor that spins that, and the takeoff for the power down to all the equipment comes off those belts there. I've just always been fascinated by that. And of course, here is a picture of one of the Lozier buildings at the appropriate time of the year here in Plattsburgh.
Boy, oh boy. I love it. What's this one? Oh, there's canvas over a wheel here.
Yes.
Just great old photographs.
And this came from some friends that I have in Evergreen Bank. This is a picture of downtown Plattsburgh. And I'm trying to remember, it's been a while, I'm trying to remember if we thought that was heading down Bridge Street. But this is downtown Plattsburgh when they had the trolleys and at the turn of the century.
I would have to guess heading down Bridge Street. What would you guess, Frank? Does it look like it's going down toward Bridge Street to you, Frank? It's hard to tell.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
It's possible that this is the old bridge.
okay. You got a turn here
You got
in
a
the track.
junction here, which could be Margaret Street from Bridge. It's hard to tell. That's part of the old Plattsburgh traction system.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, there were.
Okay, what automobile is that that's selling? There's a sign there for cars.
It says cars stop here.
Okay, they're not selling anything. I've seen a building with that architecture of the windows.
Yeah,
And I
we'll
can't
have
recall
to
where it
check
is.
that out. You just have to check that out. What a great, and that came in the frame like that?
Yes.
Yeah, isn't
Yeah.
that great?
Yeah. We have a Lozier poster from a magazine ad, and we have some more of those throughout the museum. In fact, over in the other wall, I'll show you. We have some lovely pictures. Just walk around here and I'll show you what else we've got.
All right, let's do it. Oh, we're at a display case here, and boy, you got some delicious items in here today.
Well, we have some items that people have brought us. We have some very interesting hubcaps there from a Flint car, and you can see we have some manuals and some parts off of cars, and things that we think that are just neat to look at. But there's something very, very special that I want to show you in this case. And my good friend Nancy Allen made this possible because it came from their family.
And Nancy, we had just done an interview with Nancy's husband in his hobby shop shortly before he died. What a sad thing. But Nancy's mother and father, such wonderful friends. Before Pappy Papineau died, I did, my tongue, another place where my tongue would hang out all around his house because he had the neatest antiques in his house. And his wife, we still correspond with quite often. She worked at the college for how many years? Maybe 40 years or since it was a college, a long, long time. And Frank says they were a member of all kinds of organizations.
Well, the Bombay Cycling and Cricket Club, which was Van Etten and Donnell and Rennell, and which, by the way, had a reunion. Stapleton, they this past 2 weeks ago.
Really?
George come up from Florida and everybody. Rennell was here. Everybody got together.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it was wonderful.
So you see, you're going to make us digress here every time you mention one of these local names, but they are marvelous and wonderful people.
Well, as we talked in the past, Lozier engineered some of the best vehicles, both boats and cars, in the world. They competed with Rolls-Royce and Benz, Fiat from Europe. And the man who perhaps was responsible for that engineering work, or was responsible, was a gentleman named John Perrin. And he was recognized as a very talented engineer. And after he left Lozier, he went on to work for Pratt Whitney and some other big companies. And in one of the back rooms, we have a collection of his personal works, letters that he sent out, a collection of the SAE manuals, which are the Society of Automotive Engineers, that he's hand-signed most of them. From the turn of the century through 1935. We picked up a fellow from Richmond, Virginia, helped us acquire his library. And we eventually want to develop a library here and put his things. But what more would you want from the head engineer of Lozier but his personal micrometers that he used to design things? And Nancy Allen's family were able to obtain these many, many years ago.
Isn't that incredible?
And the claim is these actually belonged to John Perrin when he did his work here in Plattsburgh.
I would have to believe it. Isn't that amazing and wonderful?
Yeah.
But, talk about tying history together, right?
Well, we've actually, once again, people have come forth with things for the museum, and we've found some very interesting things along the way.
What kinds of things do we have in here? Other things.
Oh.
What's this piece of equipment?
This is, remember, transportation museum.
Sure.
We pick up odds and ends, but this is a yoke. And if you ask
yes.
me what it's from, I remember the fellow said it's out of a very important airplane. And I've got to admit, I can't remember. But this was a yoke out of a plane that apparently crashed here some time ago, many, many years ago in the Plattsburgh area.
Down Lake Placid, the one that hit down in Keene.
Oh, really?
That was it a bomber?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Well, we just don't do cars here. We do other things. And we've got even there, we talked a little bit earlier between ourselves about Ron Venn and modeling.
Yes.
But we had one gentleman who also did modeling. And once again, we're talking about transportation here in the museum. And we have a beautiful hand-built golf cart.
Look at the golf
with clubs, with even clubs in the back.
Oh, come on.
The hickory?
Yeah, they probably are. Oh, that's neat.
Yeah.
Just a few things here that people are interested in. This is, of course, an ancient heater out of a car.
Yeah. Just some odds and ends. And,
Yep.
as we grow, we'll pick up more things. And
I kind of like these stadium seats that you have in here.
well, we actually have a building across the way, the gas station over there. We want to turn into a early 1900 gas station.
Do you really?
And that's going to be the entrance into the museum complex. And the idea, there's a bay in the back, and we want to have the entrance through there and have an audiovisual center in that bay and show tapes that we feel are relevant for what we're trying to do here, the history of transportation back in the old days.
It seems to
We have
me
some
that
good ideas.
at the Adirondack Museum in Blue Mountain Lake, they've recreated an old gas station, haven't they? Do I recall that, Calvin?
Well, they certainly have a beautiful Pullman diner car.
Oh, isn't it nice?
Yeah, yeah. And I'll tell you something, and we need some labor and some money, but they've given us on loan the Gates Diner. The Gates Diner was a 1950s diner that, and there's a whole world out there of people that are into diners, the hobbyists,
Oh, yes.
and we have it, it's in storage over at the airport in one of the hangars, but would like to get it over here into one of our big buildings and develop a display around it,
cool.
a 50s display.
That'd be so nice.
Yeah, neon lights, you know, some 50s cars parked around it, you know, walk through it, maybe even pick up some ice cream on the way.
We'll have to line you up a stagecoach. They've got a stagecoach up there at the Blue Mountain Lake Adirondack Museum, which is, I think we determine that that's the one that I rode every single day for a long, long time in my cowboy days. I think
see you as a cowboy.
Riding in the bulls and the rodeos and riding that stagecoach into town with 6 very fast horses. There was gunmen chasing us and shooting shotguns out of the windows, and that's a long time ago. Almost when Frank was a little boy. I was 20 years old and crazy, and it was Arto Monaco, whose name I've mentioned so many times to Calvin. He's the one that found that stagecoach.
I used to do the commercials for Land of Make-Believe, myself and my children, and I aired them on my country show. And I have a 8mm film that I shot of that stagecoach with my kids on the train, and we'd go down there, and they would give us one of the cars to drive. And I had one up until about 3 years ago.
Oh, gosh, really?
Yeah.
8mm?
Yeah.
Yeah, I took a few of those.
Tape if you want, so you can remember what the horses were.
I'd love it, yeah. So we got cars, and I've seen this car, and I've sat in this car, and
Well, this is a very famous car.
It's a very famous.
This is a 1948 Dodge, and it comes from John and Helen Ionelli, donated to the museum. And this is a car they've had all their life, and this was a car that they got married in.
1948. It's been in a number of parades, and it's on, I don't know how many tapes that Calvin has done of parades down through the years.
Yeah.
And isn't it neat that the Ionellis, who've given so much to this community in so many ways, would allow you to have this car in your museum?
Oh, yeah. I mean, you know, John being an ex-mayor, and Helen with her recent work with the volunteer groups, the charity groups. I mean, they're just wonderful people.
And John loves old cars.
He loves old cars. Well, I tell you, the day I took him for a ride in this car,
And did you? Did he drool?
he was in heaven. He looked at our director, Brian, he says, "Isn't this great?" He got to ride in the back. This is the Lozier.
This is the famous Lozier, and as we said to Frank a few moments ago, we've seen this car when it wasn't nearly this nice.
No.
And we've chronicled
You've done a very
the
good
birth of this car and its final completion over the years, and this is what it's all about for you, isn't it?
Well, my wife and I have fallen in love with this car. We had it restored, and we put it in a few national shows and won national recognition for the car. I mean, it's competed against the best. It was at Amelia Island this spring.
Oh, it was?
Oh, yes.
I did not know
You know,
that.
of course, Amelia Island is invitation only.
course.
It's right up there with Pebble Beach. And in fact, the car was invited to Pebble Beach, and we were supposed to take it in July to Pebble Beach. I'm sorry, not Pebble Beach, the other big show. Pebble Beach is out on the west coast. The one that's in the Michigan, it's just totally blowing I'm forgetting right
that's
now.
perfectly all right.
Meadowbrook.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, just totally.
Gotcha, Meadowbrook.
Meadowbrook, Pebble Beach, and Amelia Island, the 3 big shows. It actually was invited. Once again, you don't take a car there. It has to be invited. And they don't invite the owners. They invite the car, of course.
Yeah.
You know, and it was supposed to go, but I had a minor accident, you may have heard, in June.
Yep.
And I was a little out of it for a while. So the car didn't make it. But at this point, we feel we're probably done showing the car, and we're enjoying the car. We're driving it. And it runs very well. We got a little problem with the starter. Sometimes it starts right up. Other times it gets a little cantankerous. But you get it running, and you can just take this car and drive it. I did go on tour earlier this year, and the fellow who restored it drove it 70 miles one day, and he just never had a problem. It just runs very well.
And he put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into it,
Oh,
too.
yeah.
And we've interviewed him many times. What's his name again?
Eric Edwards
Oh,
from
all
Baxter, Ontario.
Yes. And you could tell with Eric, cars like this are truly a labor of love.
Oh, yes, yes.
I wonder how many hours you spent on it. Do you have any idea?
There's several years. It was several years.
More than a week and a
As
half.
you mentioned, you documented it. It came around quite a bit, and in various forms.
Yeah.
We have a Model T and a Model A. The Model A is interesting in that it's, you notice what side the steering wheel is on.
Yep.
It's a European Model A.
I love it.
It's not for the U.S. market. It was for the European market. And this car down here at the end, I don't know, I guess you've never seen this before.
I have never seen this car.
This is a very interesting car. Let me tell you about this car.
I love it.
Now, this is a 1917 Dodge Limousine. For those that are really into the history of Dodge, then Dodge never built a limousine in 1917.
Wow.
The claim with this car was it was built for or financed by John Dodge of the Dodge brothers to transport his two daughters around. Now, in some ways, we have some vague proof that that is true. And maybe that is true. That's the story that comes with the car. All we know is that this was a custom-built, one-off car from 1917. Somebody with money and power was able to commission to get this car built. What's really interesting about the car, and I can't remember on which side it is if you ask, and I can try to show you. I think it's the opposite side. I have to check real quick. Yep, it's the other side. The reason this car is important was the body was built by Babcock Company. Watertown, New York. You know your history.
Isn't that amazing?
So this car was built in upstate New York for somebody with a lot of money. And once again, maybe we can't fully prove that it was owned by John Dodge, but we can prove that it was built here in the North Country, so it's very important for us.
And there probably somewhere is documentation to show that it was, and you'll just have to...
Well, we just have to find it.
Turn that page of history over and discover that. In the meantime, it's a marvelous vehicle. I love it.
It's a limousine, you know. You have the separate compartment for the passengers. Do you notice the
vase for the flowers?
Vase for the flowers over on the other side?
Isn't that great? With that dome light? Come on, give me a break.
Yeah.
Is this cool?
Yeah.
And it hasn't been restored for a long time.
No, no. And we talk about, you know, it's a debate what you do with vehicles like this.
Yes, it is.
Because what's happened is when you go to car shows, and admittedly the Lozier is an example of it, you restore these cars and you make them beautiful. In some ways you over-restore them. You know, there's some ways better than what they came from the factory. And there's a wave going on in this country where now at car shows they have special classes for vehicles that have never been touched. And for example, Eric Edwards, he has a Model K Ford. There's only 7 of them in North America. His is the only one that's original right down to the paint and the wooden wheels. And he will tell you that he has had Ford Motor Company approach him about buying the car. He won't part with the car. He's told me what he thinks the car is worth as it sits, certainly well up into the 6 figures. And he tells me that if he restores it, like he did with the Lozier, it'll probably be only worth about 60% the amount. It's actually more value in its natural condition. So people, when you look at this car, you say, oh, it's got some rust on it, the paint's chipped and things like that, and the leather's horrible. But it's truly a piece of history that's untouched. That hasn't been modified or changed. It's the way it came out of the factory. And apparently the story with the car, why Ford is so interested in it, they think that it was the prototype for the production line. So he ain't giving that car up very easily.
I can't. And he's the kind of guy that would be able to find a vehicle like that, you know, because he's done so many things. Just listening to him talk with love in his voice about restoring your Lozier.
Yeah.
He sold me over and over again.
Yeah.
Here's a boat engine.
This is another one that has a plate that says Plattsburgh, New York. This came from the Church family. It's a 1905 3 horsepower single-cylinder boat motor. A lot easier to start than that first one I showed you.
Oh, yes.
And
I love the sound of them when they run. I've heard motors this size running in boats, and the sound is just wonderful.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, this is another boat that we could potentially get running, another motor we could get running and put in a boat, and we'd like to do that someday.
That's great.
Over there on the wall, you see one of the buildings. Ron Venn helped me get that picture. One of the buildings that it was owned by Lozier. Next to it, you see an ad out of a magazine for Lozier. And over here, we have more pictures. This picture is, I think, is very interesting. Once again, I had said about inside the factory with the power takeoffs to run all the equipment and all the parts. And I think what happened is back then you had cameras with very, very slow shutter speeds, and what you've got is the window with the bright sun coming through. It's a nice picture.
Oh, that's a great shot.
We have more pictures, actual ads out of magazines. They were in Life magazine from the early 1900s, ads that ran. Here's one right here. It says Life. And in all their ads, they did these beautiful, high-quality pictures.
This Lozier Works, and there's the same building that Ron showed you the other blow-up of. That's a great photograph.
Yeah. And another picture of inside the factory of Lozier. And over here
Just let's let Calvin catch up with the camera here to show us a picture of that, just to give you an idea what that assembly line looked like. With those wonderful, huge leather belts that connected everything.
Yeah.
And, the Rolls Royce, that's very neat. The 1907 Silver Ghost.
Yeah.
Wow.
And of course, where would we be without trying to have a Lozier museum without a picture of Mr. and Mrs. Lozier, who were responsible for all of it?
Very, very, very nice. This we've talked about before, the racer, the fact that the Lozier automobile was in the Indianapolis 500.
Yep.
Some claim this
Won the first ever Indianapolis 500. It was credited with second place. But there was, in retrospect, details brought out from timing and scoring that indicates that it probably did win the first ever Indianapolis 500. And that comes from, the work that went on here in Plattsburgh.
Here's something that just occurred to me. Have you made a connection with any other true Lozier aficionados?
There are some out there, and I've talked to them. There's one I haven't gotten around to talk to, and certainly I understand from Eric, I just pick up the phone and call him. But the fella, his last name is Coker, Harold Coker, who has Coker Automobile tires. He makes all the vintage replica tires for cars from the early century or from the 60s. The reason I say this is he has a 1909 Lozier, and he raced it in the Great American Race last year. It's an event that goes on every year.
Sure.
And it's a road rally. It's a time distance scoring. You have to drive down the road at such a speed, like 35.8 mile an hour, and then turn at some mysterious place that you have to figure out from the instructions. And this event went on. This particular race goes for 2 weeks. They cover many hundreds, if not 1,000 miles over several states. And Harold won last year in the brass era class driving the 1909 Lozier.
Oh, isn't that neat?
And he did it with his, I saw it on television. His boy's probably about 12 or 14, and the boy did the
navigating.
The navigating for Dad.
It. Oh, isn't that cool?
They accomplished it.
Where did you get the blue Sunoco?
Well,
gas?
Randy Beach obtained that for
Randy
us.
got it?
Yep, Randy obtained
I should have guessed.
Yeah.
They had it in the garage next to all his Jeeps somewhere.
Yes, I think that was part of the story.
Isn't that neat?
Yeah.
Talk about memories for old you-know-whats like Frank and me, right, Frank?
Woody, I did a diving
Come on
job
over
over in
closer.
Burlington over at the Mobile Oil Terminal. And on the bottom of the lake were 5 Saucony vacuum signs, which went back about 1939. They were buried in the sand, perfect condition.
No kidding.
And of course, fool that I am, I sold them. I needed the money.
eBay would be coming up on my computer so fast.
Some other things we have. Well, we have a collection of model cars we keep adding to.
Oh, isn't that neat?
And
The beautiful cars of yesteryear.
Yeah.
Did you show them the Camaro?
that's over on the other side. We can take a walk over there.
It is?
but yeah, I believe it's parked over on the other side. Just to come around the museum, this is a flight simulator that was built by several people. It's not hooked up electronically, but the switches you can turn. And it was over at the Historic Society. And with their move and lack of space, they've lent it to us. And we use it. The kids that come here to the museum just have a ball playing.
I bet
and we have
they
a hard time getting them out of it.
Kids love hands-on experience.
Oh, well, it is. And
Can you touch it? Yeah, you can
climb
turn
in it. You can push the buttons and turn switches. And we've always thought from the beginning that we would be kid-friendly and have activities for children. And we do put on events out here. Over on the other side is a plywood ramp where the kids we bring all the Legos out, and the kids build Lego racers, and they race them down the ramp.
I love it.
And over here, these 5 cars were donated by Rich Knight of Knight Automobile. And when we have some 3- and 4-year-olds, we can do pedal car racing.
Ta-da!
And the kids have a ball.
Some of the old pedal cars are getting to be worth a little bit of money too, if you've ever checked that kind of stuff.
And this is a Porsche 914. When we have kids over, I don't know if I can do the same thing that Brian, our director, does, but he has the kids over, and he brings the kids around the car, and he says, "This is an interesting car." I'm not going to be able to do it. Oh.
It's in there somewhere.
Yep.
You're like me trying to get in my car on a regular basis.
Let's see if I can do this. There's a switch here, and I've got to figure out how. There we go. So,
There, nice trunk.
well, what Brian likes to do is he says, "Hey kids, come here. Where's the motor? There's no motor in this car."
Isn't that beautiful?
So he takes them to the back. And he goes, "Kids, there's no motor in the back. Where's the motor?"
I love it.
And the little kids stare and think about it and they wonder, and they say, "Geez, where is the motor?" And I actually don't know how Brian opens it, but you can open this, and when you open it up, the motor's sitting right here. This is what you call a midship engine car,
Sure
midship
is.
engine, where the car is actually built the motor is put in the middle of the car. But we have fun with the kids.
That's great. They love it.
Oh, they love it.
The Camaro is sitting right in the garage over here.
Okay, we'll take a walk over.
Yeah, Frank said we had to see the Camaro. This is your personal Camaro, which you're going to...
No, it's not my personal Camaro. It belongs to the museum.
But I thought, wasn't this your car beforehand?
Well, it passed through some hands.
Yeah, it passed through some hands, and you decided you'd raffle it off for the benefit of the museum. But talk a little bit about the car itself, because this is beautiful.
Well, this is a '69 Camaro Rrss, somewhat of a rare model, having both those packages, the RS package and the SS package. It's a big block, started out at 396 cubic inch, but the engine has been well redone. So this has quite a bit of horsepower. And it's the classic rally green. This was one of the most popular colors with the white Z28 stripes on it. This was the car to have from that era. And it's loud, it's noisy, it's rough, but it excites a lot of people when you give it the gas because you can just spin the back tires like crazy.
Forever and ever and ever and
Ever
ever
and ever
and
and
ever.
ever.
Just an absolutely beautiful machine.
And it's been restored in very good condition, both inside and out.
Yeah, it's incredible. We have to take a look at this power plant. Isn't
We have
that?
enough light in here, but
Yes, there's enough shining off the top of my head to reflect on the chrome. That's beautiful.
yeah, the engine has been redone. Certainly does not have just 350 horsepower as the label says on the air cleaner. It's got a lot more of that. It's up into the 400. It has all the tricks that those that build these type of motors know about. Start it up, run it. It's It's a neat car to drive.
Have you put a lot of miles on it
No,
yourself?
no.
Not very many?
No, it's Mrs. Vaccaro doesn't really like to ride in it. It's a little too much.
My kind of car.
Yeah.
Just absolutely beautiful. I was telling Kelvin and Frank, a friend of mine showed me his beautifully restored 442, 69 442 the other night, and I just ogled at it. You got some other nice vehicles in here.
Well, yeah, what you're standing is in the second half of this building. We, as you saw over there, we cleaned it up, we painted it. We didn't have to do very much to get it operational. And what we're standing here is in the other half. Used to be a workshop for the people here at the Air Force Base. It comes with a functional lift. We've used
nice.
it.
Have you really?
Well,
In fact,
this car needed some work on its rear axle, and we just drove it up there and we lifted it up, and so it's a nice addition to the museum. And in fact, we've talked about, we're still not sure what we're eventually going to do with the space, because one of the things that came up was maybe having the opportunity for locals, individuals to come in, whether they rent a space or some kind of arrangement, where we could actually have a workshop. If somebody wanted to come in and do some work, we would have the capability of doing that in here. But eventually we'll get this place fixed up. And over here is quite a rare car. It's a 1969 Trans Am Firebird from Pontiac. It's got the big block motor in it. This was the first year they ever built a Trans Am, and that year they built about 740 models, of which only 144 were 4-speeds. The rest were all automatic transmissions, and you can guess that this one has a 4-speed.
Of course, I would have to guess that.
And now this car, Mrs. Vaccaro does like to ride.
She does?
This one she likes. And it has a little bit more of a European look to it than some of the American muscle cars from back then.
Does she drive it?
Yeah.
She does?
Yeah, you ought to see her drive the Lozier.
Oh, gosh.
Well, what happened was the accident I had a few months ago, we had an event to take the Lozier to, and I certainly couldn't drive it with my shoulder. So she got a real quick course one night here at the museum. We took the car out and drove it around the oval, and I said, "There, you know how to drive the car, and let's go. We have to pick up some dignitaries."
And she did it?
She did it. She was a little panic-stricken, but she did it. And now, I mean, she feels very comfortable in the car. She can get in it, start it up. She knows the tricks to starting it up. And she can take off and drive in it.
That's great. I know our audience loves old cars because we've featured many old cars over the years in the course of doing this show for 7 years, and you got a nice collection.
Well, this is a car that's been loaned to us, and we're keeping it for the lady, but it's a 74, I believe, Camaro. In pretty good shape, and it's a car that actually isn't as rare as the Camaro or the Firebird that we just showed you. There were many of these built, but to this particular lady, the car means a lot to her. She's had it for a number of years, and it's very special to her. She's actually needed to find a home for it for a short period of time till she sorts out some issues. So we have the car, and you know, it's an example of a muscle car from that era. It's in very good shape, so it's serving a purpose while it's here. We can display it and we can talk about it. In the back there is a Fiat 124, which was a very popular car back in the. I'm trying to remember. My friend Mark Chornick had one, and it was in my college years, so it would have been the early mid-'70s. I know my friend had one of those, and they were a very popular car on campus, so to speak, because it was an inexpensive Italian sports car that one could own. That car has been donated to the museum as part of the collection. Yeah, that came from an individual.
So you haven't decided what you're going to really do on this end, except maybe turn it into a shop, or?
We'll make it into a shop, or we can paint the walls and we can make it more display area. See, we have across the road, across the parking lot there, I mentioned we have the gas station where we're going to be doing the main entrance, but there's a building right over there that has 15,000 square feet. And we want to make that into display area. We eventually would like to have the Lozier Gallery over there. There's one part of the museum that sort of mimics that factory that I was showing you the pictures of. And we sort of said, you know, you put the Lozier here, you get the right things around it, you could really make this look like the original factory, relatively easy. And that's what we'd eventually like to do. And then there's a space over there that we want to put the Gates Diner that I mentioned earlier, and develop a display around that. And then what else is available, which we'd like to do, it depends on, you know, are we able to accomplish it? But there's another building next door that's available. The mayor has, Mayor Stewart has said that, you know, if you can find a proper use for it, it would be yours. And that's the historic stables that date back to, I believe, the 1800s when they had horses here in a cavalry.
They do.
And my wife has come up with the idea that it would make a great children's museum, and you walk into it and you can see that it could happen because you can redo the stalls, and each stall would be a different hands-on display, and the kids could go from one to the next right down through it. And in the back there's actually 2 stories, and we could develop classrooms up on the 2nd story. You're talking a lot of dollars to do that. I mean, it's a big building. But if we were able to accomplish that, that would be great for Plattsburgh. And, you know, once again, we're very kid-oriented over here, and we'd like to see these things for the kids. This is not just a car museum. It's supposed to be all forms of transportation, and it's supposed to be come in and put your hands on it.
I love it. Let's go out in the other part and talk some more, okay? Well, this is way more than the nickel tour, Tony.
Yeah, I have one more thing I want to show you, and we'll see if you can guess right off the bat what this is.
Okay.
I had never seen one of these before, and it's functional, and we've tried it, and it works.
Okay.
This was given to us by somebody here in Plattsburgh. See, we don't do just transportation.
Oh, come on.
Can you imagine what this is?
It's a lawnmower.
It is a lawnmower.
Isn't
it's a
that amazing?
Montel mower, as it says. It's got the original paint on it for the name there.
Is there a date?
I'm not sure. Let's
Keep well clear. In other words, don't run over your pets or small children with this.
See how this thing is made? Look at all the gears. I'm turning around, maybe better.
You know, I
picture.
have to confess that I've seen.
Have you? You're that old?
I'm pretty old, but I've actually seen one like this somewhere.
Oh, look at this. It has all the little wheels that are cutting.
Beautifully
They're still
engineered.
sharp. They're beautifully engineered.
Did you try to cut something with it?
Yeah, we took it outside. My daughter, my 10-year-old daughter, took it out there in the yard, and she got actually cut grass with it. She said, of course, this is very tiring.
Oh,
You mean you tell me
no
we'd
motor on that.
we'd have to do a whole yard with this? I said, yes, dear.
You couldn't see a date on it, though.
Well, let's take a look here. Let's look a
Well,
little
I'm
closer.
very interested.
I'll bet you in the 20s.
This was made by the Monta Motor Company,
Traverse City, Michigan.
Keep well oiled. Patent August 20th something, 24th or something, 1923.
You are so.
I saw an ad for them in I've got a collection of popular mechanics from 1922 to 1969. And I saw an ad for them in there, so I'm cheating a little bit.
Yeah, okay.
Well,
This was given to us by, from a fella, you may know him, and I'm not making this name up, Monte Carlo.
Monte Carlo,
Yeah,
I
you know
do,
Monte
I do,
Carlo?
absolutely do.
Well, Monte, this was in Monte's collection, and he gave it to us.
That's so
And,
neat.
oh yeah, this is great. I just,
So neat.
I actually took it out myself. It was cutting some grass just to see if it
They're
would work.
relatively rare, and again, I'll confess that I wrote a column on the history of lawn mowing some time back and did a great deal of research and turned up quite a few photographs of mowers like this.
Well, then
People
you're
have
familiar.
tried everything over the years.
I never had seen anything like this.
I
So when
love
he
it.
showed it to me, I was just at laughter over it with all those little wheels spinning. I thought it was great.
Some engineering genius put that thing together, right?
Yeah, yeah. So we have some interesting things here, and it's a start.
What? Oh, you got a scooter here. What used to be a
Oh
little.
yeah, we even have a scooter that. In fact, I think Monty gave this to us also.
Isn't that cool?
And it's original. It'd be nice if we could find some wheels for it. We have a second one. I'm not sure where it is right now, but there's a second one that's a little bit newer than this, with some big wheels on it, and it's in a little bit better shape. And we could start a scooter collection.
Well, when you
find enough of
say
them.
transportation museum, that's what you mean. All
Well, that's
kinds
exactly
of
right.
transportation. So you started with a dream. You got the museum open. It's nowhere near what you want it to be, and you've already given us a little bit of your vision. Any more elements of that vision that we haven't heard today?
Well, reality sat in about 6 to 12 months ago when my wife looked at me, and I was a little bit down, saying, "You got to move this thing along more." She said, "You realize this is going to be a lifetime of work." And that's I walked into this. I walked into this with some blinders on, saying we're going to get this up and running and be fabulous within a short period of time. But it's come quite far for what limited funds that have been available. What I want to eventually see, we actually have some engineering, architectural sketches on how this building would look like on the outside if we ever had the opportunity to remodel it. And inside we would develop into a little bit more functional space, and there's actually plans for a stair tower to go up to the roof so you could overlook the lake.
I like that already.
Yeah.
What a great idea.
It's if the building is right along the bike path, and as more and more people move out here and more people use the bike path, it's easy access. It's just a walk up over the short hill. So we'd like to develop more, being open more during the daytime, and invite those people to come in and out. I'd like to see the Lozier Gallery develop, because there's a lot out there yet to collect, and I think it would be wonderful. And eventually we'd like this to be a museum mall, or campus is probably the correct word. We started out with the word mall, but BOPA is still trying to develop the area across the yard over there. Frank Pabst has had some very constructive conversations with the Historic Society. They've sort of been trying to sort out where they're going to end up, and there's a possibility of getting them out here. I mean, and if you think about it, what this could ultimately be is quite a large, many-acre, many-building museum campus depicting a variety of historic facts, articles, information. And there's no reason why this couldn't be big enough to attract people from across the country and from down in from Canada. And we're right along the lake, and with Frank developing the marina down there, we could be sailing the weather wax out of there, and eventually a boat with that Lozier motor in. This could easily develop into, over years with the proper funding, quite a complex that would draw people from a long distance, and that's what I would like to see happen here.
We would too, and we'll do our little bit to try to help you promote that. And I'm sure that people who are viewing this program on their various cable systems, some might have ideas, and I'm sure you'd be open to
well, we're open to everything right now.
Volunteer work, people who know how to write grants. Funding is essential.
Funding is very essential for a project like this. We're hoping that corporate sponsors will come up, local sponsors, and we'll let them put their name on it and help develop this. Any small donations from people, both financially and from relevant artifacts. We do need volunteers. Help to run the kids programs that we're working on. We're looking forward to 2 more kids programs this fall, and then next year we want a series of children's programs guided, I should say, by Tanya Robinson and some of the other ladies who work out at CVES, what I call CV Tech from the old days. We want to get speakers. We have a speaker coming up later this month. She's coming up from Milford, Pennsylvania, to talk about leather restoration, and next year we'd like to get a monthly series started. As we stand here, or this morning, we had a meeting of the board of directors, and we're looking at the first draft of our Transportation Times, our newsletter, that Bruce Carlin over at Media Central has been working on, him and Rod Moore. So there's a lot of things in the pipeline, and anybody who can come forth and help us in some way with all of those items, we're certainly open. As you can see, we really haven't defined a solid vision on what's going to be in the museum. We're developing it as we go, what becomes available and what the interest is. And we're very fluid right now as we grow.
And as people come here to see this, they get in on the ground floor. They see it from the very beginning, and as we did, in taking pictures of that delightfully delicious Lozier automobile from the beginning to the finished product. We all watch it grow and encourage you in every possible way. And it's a community effort, and we have to get the rest of the community involved in at least talking about things like this.
Absolutely.
Hopefully if people see this program, they'll say, hey, look at that. Did you see that car? That car was made here in Plattsburgh.
Right.
Pass the word, get enthusiastic about it, and by this time next year,
who knows?
Who knows?
But we do have a phone number, and that's 566-7575. It's pretty easy, 566-7575. And we did have help with Experience Works has come forth, and we have Ralph now joining us, and Ralph's going to be here Tuesday through Saturday. We admittedly haven't done the best job of having consistent hours being open this year, and that's mostly because we haven't had the volunteers. But we now have somebody on board, and he'll be here from 10 to 2, Tuesday through Saturday, into late October. We have to close down this primary building, but we're going to use the gas station as an office to work out of during the winter months. You can imagine heating a building like this is pretty difficult. But then we'll open up in the spring again and have more consistent hours and have more activities. So we're growing.
Yeah, I can't wait to see what it's going to be like next year. Frank, come over here just a minute. I want to thank you for your contribution. Frank and I have been friends for many times. He's been, for many years, he's been one of the true visionaries in this area. And sometimes those visions have been forced to fly away in the night. Or
yes, you pay the price for having visions sometimes.
I've heard voices for a long time, too, and I don't know where that comes from. But thanks for everything you've done, and thanks more than that for your friendship all these years.
Well, Gordy, I appreciate our friendship, and I appreciate you and Cal coming out and getting the side of the news that the people wouldn't ordinarily see. A lot of comments on shows you've done with me and with other people. You've done a splendid job, and you guys are to be congratulated.
We enjoyed it, and we hope to do it for a long time into the future. Dr. Tony Vaccaro, thanks again.
It's a pleasure.
For your dream. Just keep having dreams. Well,
this started with my daughter's dream, to be honest with you. She thought it would be a great idea to have a place for kids to play and see things, and hey, I just wanted a car museum. She actually came up with the concept that it's got to be more.
I love it.
So
I love it. Let's do it. Guys, thanks again. Thanks to Calvin for holding the camera. Can you imagine what a groove you must have in a shoulder after all these years? And who knows where we're going to be next time for our little corner.